I'm Ashley, a 27-year-old part-time housewife. I also work as a trainer at a fitness gym in New York. Lately, I've been troubled by a certain problem. One afternoon, I had this phone conversation with my husband, Mark. Mark, did you go into my room without asking? Or was it your mother who came yesterday? Huh? What's this all of a sudden? I'm on my lunch break at work right now. Can we talk about this later? And why are you bringing up my mom's name? The voice of my husband on the phone sounded terribly lazy and unpleasant. After your mother visited yesterday, my favorite earrings and dress disappeared from my room. Earrings? What about earrings and a dress? I don't know anything about that. I was going to wear them to a friend's wedding tomorrow, so I had carefully placed them in a drawer and closet. I don't know anything about that. You probably just put them somewhere yourself and forgot. His increasingly unpleasant voice made me feel like my chest was being squeezed. They're important to me, so there's no way I would just put them somewhere carelessly or forget about them. So why? I told you, I don't know. And since we live in the same house, can't you let it go even if something goes missing? It's not just a something. My accessories, clothes, and even figures and books have almost half gone missing. Do you really have no idea where they went? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. Can we finish this? I don't want to waste my precious lunch break on this. And if you accuse my mother of something again, I don't know what I'll do. Wait, just a. He hung up without listening to me till the end. Recently, our house has been plagued by the mysterious disappearance of items. Especially every time my mother-in-law, Dorothy, visits. Something of mine invariably goes missing, no matter how well I store them. I've asked my husband about it several times in this manner, but he either evades the question or outright dismisses me. Especially since my husband tends to be a bit of a mama's boy. If I ever so much as doubt his mother or speak ill of her, he becomes visibly emotional and confrontational. And so, one day, as I continued to accumulate stress, an incident occurred. My mother-in-law made an oddly triumphant phone call. Hello, Ashley. I've got big news. Huh? The cheerfully toned call from my mother-in-law was followed by a shocking statement. With the $500,000 you had saved up, I bought a luxury high-rise apartment. Really, hiding such a large sum in a bank book without telling your husband? And keeping it a secret is just cowardly. The bank book containing $500,000. Before hearing those words, I remembered that it was supposed to be securely stored in a drawer but had disappeared. And amidst these recent losses, I had been starting to suspect who the culprit was. But I never expected such a revelation. Even so, I don't think it's right to tell Mark about this. What's not right about it? A wife's belongings are her husband's. And a wife's belongings are her mother-in-law's. You should have been prepared for this when you married into this family. Really, what kind of education did your parents give you? It's often said that thieves are the most brazen. I haven't received such a "what's yours is mine" education, that's for sure. Huh? What did you say? Mom, hand over the phone. Hey, Ashley. Don't you dare speak rudely to my mom. It seemed my husband, who was apparently with his mother, suddenly interjected into the phone call. While almost lost for words at this development and the realization that my husband was also involved in the disappearance of the bank book, I continued. Mark, if you have any conscience left, you should immediately cancel the purchase of the high-rise apartment and return all the money from that bank book. Huh? That's impossible, obviously. His words, now openly mocking as if there was no need to hide anything anymore, made me feel even more constrained, but I desperately continued. Mark, do you even realize what you're doing? That money belongs to someone else. This is outright theft, a serious crime. Shut up. This is a family matter, there's no place for a third party to intervene. What's wrong with a son making his mother happy and protecting her? My husband was blatantly displaying his excessive attachment to his mother, uttering such outrageous arguments. Surely, being spoiled by his mother since he was a child played a part. But I never imagined his nature could be so rotten. If you don't like what my mom and I have decided, you can just divorce me. If I felt like it, I could find a replacement for you anytime. All you need to do is think about making me and my mom happy. What about my happiness? I don't care. I have my mom. After getting married, I realized that I only need my mother. Everything else, including you, is worthless. I see, understood. Then, please tell your mother that she can have the bank book. Feeling ridiculous even continuing the conversation, I said just that and quickly ended the call. Saying, "You can have the bank book," was the last thing I said. And I felt as though I heard my mother-in-law and husband's ear-splitting cheers. But I no longer wished to hear their voices and hung up swiftly. It was truly shocking. I had tried so hard and served them well, but to think this was their response. And truth be told, this was the only chance I was giving to these thieving, low-quality parents and child, but sadly, they squandered it themselves. If they wanted to be together that badly, I figured it was time to leave them to their own devices, alone or not. The next day, a frantic call from my mother-in-law came to my smartphone. Hello? Ashley. Help. Come save me and Mark right now. Her voice was desperate. Hearing it, I immediately had an inkling. Oh. From your tone, it seems you figured out who the real owner of that bank book is? Yes, not me but your husband. Just come to the high-rise apartment now. The address is... Hey. I'm not finished talking yet. Ah. Just come, please. On the other end of the phone, I could hear my father-in-law, Robert's angry voice, along with the screams of my husband and mother-in-law. Recently, there had been numerous instances of personal items going missing at my in-laws. And despite questioning his wife and son, my father-in-law had been brushed off, leaving him as frustrated as I was. For the time being, until he found a way to secure his belongings, perhaps in a safe. He had entrusted his bankbook to me for safekeeping. And it turned out that the bankbook and seal taken by my mother-in-law and husband were my father-in-law's. Despite my reluctance, I decided it was time to set things straight and headed to the high-rise apartment. Upon arriving, I found my husband and mother-in-law seated on the floor in front of an angry Robert. Why did you call Ashley? She has nothing to do with this. Under further pressure from my father-in-law, my husband and mother-in-law, trembling, turned to me in desperation, pointing and trying to make excuses. Eek. You have it, you have it. Yeah. That's right. It's all Ashley's fault. She lied, saying she had my dad's permission to use the money from the bank book to buy a high-rise apartment. Is that so? Can you swear to that? When the skeptical father-in-law asked, both my mother-in-law and husband confidently shouted yes in response. Then, my father-in-law turned to me and asked. They seem pretty confident about their story. What about you, Ashley? No, father. Everything they're saying is nothing but desperate lies. As I said this without hesitation, my husband and mother-in-law started to make a fuss. That's a lie. You must not believe what Ashley says. If you're blaming us, then show us the proof. Show us the proof that we did it. Then, take a look at this. At this point, I showed a video file on my smartphone. Seeing the video, my husband and in-laws were shocked and in uproar. I have captured on hidden camera both of you stealing the bank book. And before that, your thefts in my room. And these data are securely stored on my computer. What? Camera? There's no way. There couldn't possibly be cameras anywhere in that room. Oh? That's strange. It sounds like you're saying you were cautious of cameras being installed as you entered the room. Indeed. When items began disappearing more frequently, I had installed hidden cameras in my room. The cameras captured my husband and my mother-in-law entering my room to steal, laughing greedily as they secretly took items like earrings and dresses that could be of value. And also, stealing my father-in-law's bank book from my drawer. Even if I were to give you the benefit of the doubt and you had been told by Ashley, it's $500,000 we're talking about. Why didn't you check with me again or consult me before taking it out? That's because we trusted Ashley, and above all, we wanted to surprise you. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. Despite the evidence being revealed, my husband and mother-in-law still seemed to seriously think they could talk their way out of it, both of them nonchalantly making excuses. This only fueled my father-in-law's anger even more, like pouring gasoline on a fire. Then why is the apartment registered under Mark's name? That's because Ashley said it was okay to do so. Is that so, Ashley? Is this true? When my father-in-law asked skeptically again, I answered without hesitation. No. This too is a desperate lie. I've already shown the evidence video, and I've said that the data exists. Yet how long are they going to keep up this charade? Hey. Who's throwing a tantrum here? Stop being so persistent, it's annoying. That video must be something you fabricated, right? If you've done something wrong, Ashley, you should apologize to those you've inconvenienced. Enough already, you two. Father-in-law shouted loudly, silencing my husband and mother-in-law as they continued to embarrassingly throw tantrums. Excuses and reasons aside, the ones who should be apologizing are you two. Stealing the bank book, using the money without permission to buy a high-rise apartment. Isn't that all there is to it? Faced with my father-in-law's relentless anger, my husband and mother-in-law were silenced by fear, unable to come up with any retort. Dorothy, you've been on probation before for shoplifting, haven't you? I started thinking about that after I happened to overhear Ashley mentioning to Mark that things were going missing from the house. Since we also experienced frequent disappearances at our house, I felt uneasy and asked Ashley for details. That's when I heard about the idea of setting up cameras in the house. So I decided to install hidden cameras in our home as well. Saying this, my father-in-law showed a camera that seemed to be one of the hidden cameras he had set up at his house. He then turned on the camera to show the recorded video footage. Dad, this is you. What? My husband and mother-in-law couldn't hide their surprise. The footage showed my mother-in-law committing theft at their home as well. Cut it out. Setting up something like this in our home is a violation of privacy. Give back Mom's privacy. Such high and mighty words should be saved for after you've seen yourselves in the mirror. My father-in-law dismissed my husband's desperate counter-argument with even more fury. How deplorable. To think that two thieves would emerge from my own family. You two better think about your future actions carefully. This won't end without consequences. Despite my father-in-law's angry declaration, my mother-in-law and husband either hadn't comprehended the seriousness, or were still trying to bluster their way out, as they both scoffed in response. Not let it go, Robert. You're going to go that far? Really, such a pointless and futile effort. You think we didn't consider the risk of getting caught when we did all this? A theft within the family won't be charged as a crime, you know? What are you saying? Explain yourself. My father-in-law was visibly disgusted by their defiant comeback. This is referred to as the relative theft exception, which is a special case for crimes committed among family members. It specifies that theft and real estate usurpation between family members shall be exempt from punishment. By that punishment, it means that criminal charges are always exempt, meaning criminal proceedings will never go forward. What? Such nonsense exists. You two are thieves who stole $500,000 from me and personal belongings from Ashley. Despite my father-in-law's furious anger, my mother-in-law and husband used this so-called relative theft exception as a shield, mocking him with the notion that they couldn't be touched because the crime occurred within the family. Sadly for my mother-in-law and husband, they had overlooked two critical mistakes in their reliance on this relative theft exception. Therefore, I stepped in to counter on behalf of my father-in-law. Sorry to burst your bubble, but you two are making two fatal misunderstandings, aren't you? Huh? Misunderstandings? With my mother-in-law and husband looking on incredulously, I explained the correct meaning of the relative theft exception, as detailed to me by a friend who is a professional lawyer. The relative theft exception applies only to victims who are spouses, direct blood relatives, parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, and other cohabiting relatives within 6 degrees of consanguinity or 3 degrees of affinity. This means, while it may be difficult to pursue criminal charges against my mother-in-law due to her marital relationship with my father-in-law, as I am outside the range of cohabiting relatives within 3 degrees of affinity, I can charge my mother-in-law with theft. Upon explaining this fact, my mother-in-law began to panic and pressed Mark for answers. What? What do you mean? Mark. This is not what you said. Wasn't the relative theft exception supposed to protect us? That's... Wait, Ashley, you have a lawyer friend. That's right. Anyway, including this incident, there's plenty of video evidence recorded by the cameras, so I can sue my mother-in-law for theft. As I declared this, the smugness disappeared from my mother-in-law and husband's faces, leaving them pale with fear. I added to the onslaught by explaining another misconception about the relative theft exception that my friend had taught me, clarifying its true meaning. While the relative theft exception does exempt one from criminal penalties, it does not prevent civil claims for damages. The exception is a special provision set forth in the criminal law, with strictly limited applicability concerning the types of crimes and the scope of application. Even if exempt from criminal charges, it is possible to pursue civil claims for damages and restitution for stolen property. This means that in this case, my mother-in-law and husband are not protected by the relative theft exception. And more importantly, it's common even among family members to have to repay and compensate for damages. If not recognized, it would establish the terrifying fact that family members could steal with impunity. Such a thing. Wait, Mark. Faced with these facts, my mother-in-law clung to my husband, who had completely lost his will to fight. The saying that a drowning man will clutch at a straw fits perfectly here. After hearing my explanation and regaining his spirit, my father-in-law declared, having learned from me that he could reclaim the money used to purchase the high-rise apartment through civil litigation. Dorothy. Mark. I will be claiming $250,000 from each of you as half of the damages. And as of today, I disown and sever all ties with you both. And from me, a disownment and divorce, compensation for the stolen items, and damages for emotional distress. If you have any complaints, feel free to hire a lawyer or do whatever you please." With this declaration, my mother-in-law and husband were thoroughly defeated, becoming the living dead together. Afterward, my father-in-law and I divorced and severed ties with my husband and former mother-in-law, respectively. The former mother-in-law owed $250,000 for misusing the bank book, and $20,000 to me for damages, totaling $270,000. My former husband owed the same $250,000 for the bank book misuse, and $20,000 for emotional distress due to using the divorce as a threat, also totaling $270,000, accumulating a debt of $540,000 for both. Naturally, they sold the high-rise apartment immediately but were only able to sell it for $250,000, leaving them with a debt of $290,000 still remaining. The two, now living in a cheap apartment costing around $200 a month, are reportedly working day and night to pay off their debt. However, since my former husband was always a part-time worker with a history of not holding on to jobs and relied on my income, and my former mother-in-law lived a carefree life as a homemaker, they are hardly able to pay off the debt and are living day to day. Now, the once close-knit mother and son are nowhere to be seen, reportedly engaging in daily loud arguments that disturb the neighbors. On the other hand, having continued my job as a gym trainer and having enough savings to live on, I've started a new life freed from my former mother-in-law and husband. I'm truly hoping to meet someone wonderful next time.